Okay, so we are live. We're going to take just a quick second here before we say hi, before we jump in, just to do a quick check to make sure that we are actually live. So we are live.
All right. Yes, it seems like it's working on the front page.
Great.
I've got video and sound.
Perfect.
Although it does look frozen right now. So let me just, because I probably pressed. Okay, it's working. It does freeze when you press pause, if anyone needs to know.
Oh my gosh, this was like our volume, no volume situation earlier. Just had to turn it up. Great, perfect. I love when tech fixes are so easy.
Yay, so exciting. Oh, my dear, we have so much to share. And I always love working with you, Dana, because you bring so much to my life. You bring so much friendship and joy, and also you're always inspiring me. So I hope to feel inspired by you today. And we're going to talk about Saturn Retrograde, which is something I've never taught about, but I'm really excited. So we get started.
Great, you're so sweet. I love working with you too, Sandy. And I'll do my best to be inspiring. I am on the amazing island of Hawaii. Let's just turn around, just get a little like jungle glimpse for you all, wherever you're tuning in from around the world. I'm sending much aloha to you.
Beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. So maybe let's start off just like a little quickie, Sandy, about like who we are and why we're doing what we're doing here. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes. So I am an astrologer and a hypnotist. I started doing astrology. I started learning it at a young age, and I started doing it professionally mostly because my friends were always asking me to.
So, I can attest.
Yeah. So my friends really just urged me to do readings for them. And through that process, I discovered that I love it. And I have passion for astrology, and I'm constantly amazed by how much it can tell us about ourselves and the current energy that we're working with. So it's like a map that we can use to help us stay in tune with our life purpose. And that's something we're going to talk a lot about today, is purpose and alignment with that purpose. And I brought hypnosis into my practice because I wanted to have a healing method that would help people bring all of the insight that they were learning from their astrology deep into their subconscious mind, to shift patterns, to change some of these instinctual reactions that are just on factory settings, that as we grow, we realize some of those instinctual reactions bring us pain and discomfort. And so hypnosis is an incredible tool to shift those reactions into ones that feel aligned with who we are. So
yes.
Yeah, that's kind of,
and we're so grateful. We're so grateful that Sandy has stepped into, out of us just like pestering her for readings and into her full development as an astrologer. I learn from every single time we have a webinar. So hi, I'm Dana Balicki. Normally I'm out in Joshua Tree, California, but I have the honor of being on the Big Island, and I have been for a little over a week and got some more magical days here. I'm a transformational coach, which means that I guide people through deep dives into their own psyche, into their own mindset, into their own, really working with their emotions, right? So I work on the mental body, or the causal body as it's known, the emotional body, and sort of like the energetics, really helping people make big transformations in their lives. And so, today is our, Sandy and I work with the planet Saturn a lot. And because we know like how powerful, and Sandy will go into this in just a moment, how powerful that this teacher planet is for us. And so since we're in Saturn retrograde, which Sandy will go into in a minute, we really wanted to take advantage of this time to share this, what we call astro coaching. So this like deep astrology insight that can be personal and collective, and then this deep coaching insight, which also can be very personal and collective. So just to give you a sense of like what we're going to do today is Sandy's going to guide us through some, really rich insight in astrology around Saturn and the archetypes and the retrograde. And then we're going to take all of that info and we're going to move all that insight into some action with some coaching tools that I use with my one-on-one clients. And with our, with our various group courses, Sandy and I do have a group course called Saturn Return Workshop, where we do more work around Saturn and transformational work. And so we're going to share some more about that at the end of our time together today before we dive into the Q&A, right? So we'll do astrology and coaching. We'll tell you a little bit more about how you can work with us if you're feeling like moved, if Saturn is calling you. We have a little like special 48-hour window and offer for you. And then we're going to do a really rich Q&A, which everyone just likes to ask Sandy about astrology questions, which is amazing because I do too. So that's, just real quick, if you haven't taken out your journal yet, please do, because you're going to want somewhere to write things down. If you're not on your phone and you're on your computer, turn your phone off, or just turn it on silent and turn it over so you can't see it. Just sort of like prep your space here. Sandy, anything else before we dive in?
Well, folks might be curious as to what we're doing together and how we met each other. So,
duh.
We always live to tell our origin story because
Yes.
Dana and I met when we were 20, which was only 2 years ago, right, Dana?
Oh yeah, totally. Clearly, we're just 22.
No, it was almost
20 years ago.
So we started out really good friends. We were both there for each other at a time when we both felt really lonely and isolated. We met in our study abroad programs in France. And we stayed friends amazingly through our 20s and went through our Saturn returns together. Dana actually ended up being my life coach and helping me. But even before that, when we went through our Saturn returns and we both started to embark on deep healing and finding our own alignment in the world as adults, we started to realize how what we were learning and what we've continued to learn and practice could really go forward to help other people who are going through similar struggles to what we were going through, healing old patterns, gaining deep insight about yourself and the world, and paving your own road that's unique to you and really only in alignment with what you need, taking into account your relationships with others, of course, but really true to yourself. And so that's what we do together now, is we help people who are looking to find real deep alignment with themselves and feel that their lives are a reflection of that.
Yes. I can't believe I almost skipped over that. I don't know what I'm thinking. I think I'm a little island mesmerized here, but I'm so glad you brought that up. And Sandy and I love working together. So hopefully you get a sense of like, how we work. And if you have any questions that pop up during the webinar, you can just put them in the chat if you're the little chat box right below the video. And if anything comes up later, there's a little chat icon that's on the page, and you can use that to like send us a question, and it'll come to our inbox, and it goes right to me and Sandy.
Yay. So I'm going to start. My job as the astrologer is to start to talk about the big cycles that affect us all and what we're the kind of weather that we're working with, the astro weather that we're all working with, and how that astro weather sparks us to create alignment and fulfillment in our lives in different ways. So the focus of this class is Saturn retrograde. But before I can describe what the Saturn retrograde is, I need to describe Saturn. So, so just to start with, what we're talking about when we're talking about Saturn is the planet that is our teacher planet, the planet, the energy, the archetype, because each of the planets are important in astrology because there's some part of ourselves, there's some archetype, there's some part of how we need to express ourselves in the world. And Saturn is the part of ourselves that really wants to do a good job, show up on time, work hard, build something that matters, take on responsibility, be in integrity. This is the part of ourselves that is like our inner authority, our inner integrity. And Saturn as an archetype can also take on this role of the teacher that reminds us to show up on time, to do our homework, to be in integrity. And that could be an internalized part of ourselves. If you've ever had a moment where you're like, oh man, I'm so bad, I didn't show up on time, I'm late again. That might have been your inner Saturn talking to you in not so nice of a way. Or if you've had a moment where you're like, man, I really did work hard at that project. I put my all into it and I got some results that show me more of what I'm made of. That also might have been your inner Saturn talking to you. So this inner Saturn is like asking you to step up to the plate in a really big way. Saturn shows us, kind of highlights where our lessons are, so that these lessons that are very important to us, we can learn and grow and develop and get closer to being the mature, responsible adults who are learning and gain expertise and experience in ways that are really important. So Saturn is my favorite planet, if you can't tell, in the zodiac, because it's really helped, and Dana's too, because Saturn really helps us see the things that we need to see and know and learn what we need to learn so that we can actually get into alignment with who we're really supposed to be, our true life purpose. And Saturn rules the spine and the skeleton. And so we can think of being in alignment in the sense of like, if your skeleton is out of whack, then you're not going to be as comfortable. You're going to be uncomfortable. You might even be in pain. And same thing goes for our lives. If there's something a little bit out of whack, you might actually be in pain. You might be able to go through for a while and kind of ignore it, but eventually it's going to cause you pain. So that's a little bit about Saturn. I might end up talking more about the archetype, but what I want to weave in, because I know that why you're watching this is like, what is this whole thing about Saturn retrograde? And some deep information about what the retrograde is all about. So in our culture, we are familiar with the term Mercury retrograde. It's like a buzzword to a certain degree. So some of us have heard of that. Most of us at this point have heard of that. What a retrograde is when a planet appears as if it's going backwards. So none of the planets ever actually go backwards in their orbit around the sun. They're always maintaining their same pace, they're going. They're not stopping and then going backwards. That would be some feat of physics that is not possible. But because of the speed of Earth's movement in relation to the other planets, there is an optical illusion that ensues that shows it to appear as if a planet in the sky starts moving backwards. And this has an energetic effect, because in astrology, we believe that the energy, as above, so below. So as what is ever happening in our solar system is an energetic reflection of what's happening within ourselves. And so when we see and when we perceive and when we feel this apparent backwards movement, the meaning of the planet, whichever planet it is, whether it's Mercury or whether it's Jupiter or Saturn, the movement, the feeling, the energy of the planet starts to shift. And we have to take a new approach. We have to change our approach. We can't keep going the same way we were going. We have to change our pace. We have to look at things differently. And this is really effective if you think about, our whatever, if it's a certain life area, or if it's your business, or if it's your relationships, it's always good to have moments where you change your approach, where you might be going along at a fast clip, and then something happens and you say, oh, why don't I slow down a little bit and actually just see what is happening here, change my approach and get more information about this situation. And so that's the function of all of the retrogrades of all of the planets. And each retrograde is going to be specific to the planet in question. So we know a little bit about Saturn now. Saturn shows us our inner alignment. Like Saturn is kind of compelling us to show up and decide if we're working hard enough, if we're learning our lessons, if we're really showing up for ourselves the way we need to, and if we're in alignment with what our soul purpose that we created before we were born, if we're in alignment with that. or if we're off track. So this is kind of what Saturn's helping us check in with ourselves. And so when it goes retrograde, the energy shifts and we have to slow down even more and get more clear about what is happening. And it can feel like, oh my God, I was working on my business. I was going along really, I was XYZ, checking off all the boxes, making it happen. And then boom, now I have to take a step back and actually appraise the situation. Is this really in alignment with my values? Is this really in alignment? Are all of the pieces, the components, are they working in the way I want them to work? So I have a couple slides for you just to get us started with understanding this a little bit more. Let me pull
Do
that
I have
up.
to do anything for the slides? I forget.
I
Do I have
don't
to like
remember
click anything?
I'll let you know.
We did this last time and I can't remember exactly what we did.
Let's see. Nope, I think I got it. All right. So this is Saturn, the little symbol for Saturn. I think that's showing up there. Yes, it looks like it is. So that's the glyph for Saturn. This is just my little introduction to Saturn. So when we have Saturn retrograde, we have to reconsider the things that Saturn rules. We have to slow down, we have to back off, and we have to rethink it. Now, Saturn is the planet that is in charge of our earthly three-dimensional reality. Saturn is in charge of time. Saturn is Father Time. Saturn is the Roman god. The Greek equivalent to Saturn is Kronos. And as you might know about Kronos, Kronos is Father Time, chronological. This is all part of our language, okay? So Saturn being Father Time is reminding us we only have so much time here on Earth. And so we really have to be in alignment. It's this teacher coming in saying, hey, you know, you think you've got all this time in high school now, you're a sophomore, you think you can just mess around and do whatever you want, but actually you're going to graduate soon and everything you do right now matters. Everything matters. There's a timeline here. And so Saturn is reminding us like, hey, when you get to your Saturn return, which I'll talk about in just a moment, at age 29, you're starting to think like, oh, I am like a good portion of the way through my life. What have I created? What have I built? And so to take that a little bit further, time and money are very similar, actually almost kind of the same. They're both abstractions. They're both made up. And they both really show what our resources are and what we've built and created. So I, as an astrologer, include money in my Saturn story. And it's not like a direct, you know, I can look at other symbols, other planets to talk about money too, but I do like to think of Saturn as like, what are you building? What are you creating? What are your resources? Is it working? Are you in alignment? Time and money are both going to be factors in all of that. So during Saturn retrograde, checking out what those stories are about time and money is a really important thing to do. And the reason is that for both of these things, we live in a scarcity world. Our culture is all about scarcity. We don't have enough time and we don't have enough money. And we are all working from a lack. And so what I am going to say here is that in a deep way during this retrograde, which started April 29th and goes until September 18th, take this 4.5 months or so and think about like, when do I say I don't have enough time? Or when do I say I can't afford that? Get deep into the stories. Like, how did your parents deal with time? How did your parents deal with money? We're going to have a chance, if these themes are tickling your fancy right now, when we do the work with Dana coming up, you'll have a chance to kind of unpack this a little bit more. This is part of why Dana and I work together, is that I kind of say like, here's the thing to focus on. And Dana's like, okay, now we're going to dig into it. And so maybe this scarcity idea is something that's really important to you right now. It might be the top important thing. It might not. But I would say that sometime over the next 4 months, putting some attention here, shining some light, and this whole thing about scarcity would be really valuable. Another thing to look at during the Saturn retrograde is thinking about if you're feeling aligned with your purpose. Now, this is a big idea, like aligned with my purpose. First of all, I have to know what my purpose is. Then I have to like figure out if I'm on track to it. I said I could get stressed out immediately thinking about that. And so this whole thing about alignment with purpose, let me stop my screen share so you can see my face, because I like to make a lot of expressions and gestures, and I want you to see me. So this whole thing about aligning with your purpose, you know, there's a lot to unpack there. So great. Saturn retrograde is 4 months long. You've got a lot of time to kind of slow down. If you've been running at a fast pace towards something, it's time to reassess. It's time to go deeper, as deep as you can, and to seek out the tools that will help you do that. So maybe in this workshop today, as we work with Dana, this is something that you want to focus on as well. And the third thing here that we have is reconsidering your patterns and really getting into alignment with, not alignment, that's not what I want to say actually, but Saturn is our history. It's our timeline. It's all that we have built and experienced to this point, and all that we will build and experience in the future. And if we want it to really work, we have to go back to the root and make sure that the foundation is strong. And you're going to see this in just a moment as I describe more about Saturn and how Saturn affects you on a daily basis, or how Saturn affects you in your life. But for now, just to say that a retrograde is a great time to go back into the deep patterns of your life and start to pull out the story and start to see and start to feel. And it's a little counterintuitive, but because Saturn is all about like work and effort and making it happen and function and productivity and responsibility. But I also, as an astrologer, I include Saturn in doing this deep emotional work of looking at your old patterns and seeing what is creating the world that you're living in now. What pattern got started that just is still running the show in the background. And so there has to be some deep healing that comes up during this retrograde. And I should re-say that. I don't want to say there has to be, but it's a wonderful time to invite in some deep healing, and we're going to work on that today as well. So back to my slides, because I'm going to kind of pivot now from talking about the Saturn retrograde, because this happens for 4 months every year, and it's really, really important. And you can see how it's time to kind of start to do some deeper work here. But there's also, because Saturn is such an incredible archetype and such a big deal, Saturn also has certain times in your life when some of these lessons are coming up for all of us. And Saturn transits show us certain ages and certain times when we're ready to do deeper work, or we're ready to kind of like get into deeper alignment. And so I'm going to teach a little bit about that too in this workshop. I'm going to teach you about the Saturn return and the whole Saturn cycle. I'm going to run through it really quickly. And so the reason I'm teaching you about this is because the Saturn retrograde cycle is really important. But we also want to understand how Saturn is working with us in our lives on a bigger level than just this summer. We want to kind of see like, oh, what is Saturn doing for us all throughout our lives? How are we interacting with Saturn? So to start with, we have our birth chart. And so we can imagine that this little wheel here represents our birth chart in a very abstract way. And that when we were born, Saturn was in one location in the sky. So Saturn was right here at birth, let's just say. And that as you age and you grow, Saturn is going to continue to orbit around the sun and continue to impact you and have an effect in your life. And Saturn takes 29 and a half years to orbit through the chart. And so this 29 years ends up being like a really, really, really important timeline. And you can see this when people get to around age 29, they have what's called the Saturn return, and they check in to find out if they're in alignment with their life's purpose. But before that happens, there's a couple of other ages where we also check in. And if we loosely divide 29 by 4, we come up with about 7 or 8 years, okay? And so this is like a really important number because it shows that every 7 or 8 years, we have a hard aspect with Saturn. We really are kind of coming in to check in to say, am I in alignment? Am I in alignment building the life I want to build? Am I maturing? Am I taking on the responsibility I need to take on? And so the first time this happens is around age 7 or 8. Saturn gets about 90 degrees away from where it was when you were first born. And it shoots a little side eye at your birth Saturn, your natal Saturn in your chart. The next time is about 7 or 8 years later, around ages 14 or 15. Saturn is in opposition to where it was when you were born. And so it's kind of you're facing off with yourself. This continues about 7 or 8 years later, age 21, 22. Again, Saturn gives side eye to your natal Saturn. So all of these ages, you can see every 7 or 8 years are really important. Age 21 is when you're finally deemed responsible enough to take on, maybe to drink or to be renting a car, to do things where people are like, okay, we can give you, we think that you're smart enough and responsible enough now to do these things. And so it's a very important age. So is age 14, and age 7 is the age of reason. These are all really important ages.
Sandy, I was just reading that that the mental body actually like comes into like full development right around right after like age 7. That's when like our mental body
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
I know.
Also, I was also just learning that I think it's age 21. No, it's the Saturn return age 28, 29 is when our brains are finally fully developed. Like our brains stop developing essentially. So it's like it all lines up really impressively with science, with what we know of science. This is a very visceral and real experience that we check in at these ages and kind of like come to a new level in our development. So the next age 28, 29, this is when you have your Saturn return. This is a key time of maturity. This is when you have to look at the life that you built so far to see, is it what I want? Is this life that I chose the life that is really going to work for me? And so big things happen at this age. People sometimes get promotions, they get married, they have babies. Sometimes people change everything in their lives. They restructure their families. They go get whole new careers. They change career paths. Big stuff tends to happen at this age. And then this cycle continues every 7 or 8 years. We can see this happen. Age 37 is another important time, age 44, and it continues. Age 51, it continues. Age 58, 59 is the next Saturn return. So this is when you see, who am I as a wise elder now? Who do I need to be to take and share all the experience that I've gained in the world and give it back? Am I ready for that? Am I ready to take on a bigger kind of responsibility in my community? This is really a beautiful time. So here you can see all the ages if you're curious, and know that these are all ages of development, ages of coming to the next level. But of course, we're not, it's not like so clean cut that, oh yeah, I did all my work around age 29 or so. And then when I got to age 30, I'm like cooked, I did it, I'm done. Like there's definitely going to be integration before and after these time periods. But you can see here, one of the important cycles, astrology cycles, that affects you all throughout your life and helps you really get into alignment, and using the Saturn retrograde that you're in now this summer to kind of check in and maybe see, like, is there something that happened 7 or 8 years, my last Saturn transit that now is impacting me? Like, is there something I need to see? Is there something I need to learn, review, bring into my life in a new way? So this is pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to stop my screen share here.
I love all this, Sandy. And I was just thinking about, besides the, like, you know, the mental body developing, and you and I are going to geek later because there's, you know, well, I guess I'll just share really quick too. It's like, you know, when you think about like development of different chakras, like this is teachings I'm just getting, so I'm not sharing them to teach them, but like the, you know, your crown chakra starts to develop between 14 and 21. It's interesting because like when you look at, and your third eye develops between 8 and 14. So it's really interesting to sort of notice like that actually aligns with this Saturnian orbit, right? Is the development of our chakras, of our energetic centers.
That's so cool. Where did you read that?
I'll share later. We're gonna go in.
I obviously needed to know about this. Cool.
Great. Thank you, Sandy. Is there anything else you wanna share here just about the sort of our journey before we before we dive into some coaching work?
You know, it's really what this, if you've kind of gathered there's a couple of big things that aren't so obvious about all of this growing and changing and aligning. You know, it's like when we feel pushed, a lot of times we feel pushed and we think like, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to, what action should I take? Do I need to move? You know, I don't feel like things are in alignment. Should I move? Should I get, you know, should I leave my
We really
partner?
focus on doing.
Yeah. What are all the things I can do? And one of the big things that Dana and I are constantly trying to convey through our work together is that all of the Saturn stuff is about inner work. It's about going in deep to the beliefs, to the patterns that you're working with that make up the foundation of all of your thoughts and your mindset. And Dana's going to teach you very specifically about this in a moment. And when you go into those beliefs, then you can really shift your life and shift your experience and create alignment. And it's hard work sometimes. Sometimes it's easy work. Sometimes it brings up a lot of feelings. I heard a great quote that I think is always going around, but sometimes you need to hear it again. And it's like, if you can feel it, you can heal it. You know, and it's like, yeah, this is what the Saturn time is about: feeling it and healing it, feeling it and healing it, and moving it and connecting in a new way, bringing in new insight, doing the inner work, and finding alignment. And so that's what we're going to do today. So let's dive in.
Yeah. And I think one more, you know, like just the feeling it and healing it, and it's like name it, change it, right? Another way to sort of look at it. And that's what we're going to do right now together. But also that like support is really important, you know, and I mean, that's why Sandy and I have developed this work together, is because, you know, we had support in our own ways when we were going through our you know, like in our late 20s. And, you know, as Sandy was showing you, it's like all the other years that like, you know, this isn't just relegated, you know, to focusing on like the end of your 20s and the end of your 50s. There's a lot of different times, especially being in retrograde, or not in retrograde. I know that's not the way you say it. When Saturn is retrograde, that you know, that there's a lot of opportunity to like do the deep work, and sometimes we need support. So Sandy and I are here for you. And again, if you have any questions, follow-up questions, if you're watching this later, just please reach out about any aspect of it, because, you know, we're here, and we really believe in the power of doing this work, and we also believe in like not doing it alone, right? Neither Sandy or I did it alone, even though we could feel very lonely because Saturn, you know, is sort of a far out planet, and like it can feel sort of lonely and isolating, but you're not alone. Okay, so let's dive into some coaching, moving some of these Saturn insights into action. So let's actually, because we were talking about alignment, right? Like let's just, you know, take a second here and just sort of align your spine. And, you know, just like if you can, feet flat on the floor, you know, and just feel your spine. I like to sometimes imagine it like a stack of gold coins, right? And and just sort of feel the alignment, feel the way that your spine, if you notice if you're like pitching forward or if you're like pushing your ribs out to sit up straight, if you're really efforting, let it be effortless, right? Like as Sandy was saying, it's like, yeah, sometimes this work is hard work, and mostly it is, right? Deep work is hard work. I had someone the other day, I posted some quote about like going into the underworld, right? The underworld of your unconscious. And she's like, to, really do, to really like elevate your life, right? To really evolve. And someone wrote like, oh, I learned that the hard way. It's like, oh, well, I think if it's not hard, you probably weren't in the underworld, right? You weren't in that deep place. So, see if you can like not over effort and just sort of like feel your body. Close your eyes. We're just going to take a couple of deep breaths together. That's it. Just breathing in. Imagine a tube sort of running from the crown of your head, like down to like the base of your spine, maybe even just extend it a little and just bring in air, bring in breath from both ends and just let it come into your heart. That's it. Just a couple breaths like that. And as you exhale with your mouth open, a little sigh, and just let that breath sort of come out your heart space. So breathing in. We're going to take just two more. And last one. Good. Right, just a little gentle alignment here. So I want to share some of the beloved aspects of the inner work that I do with my students, that I did as a student, that changed the trajectory of my life. And not just because I ended up as a coach when I was a longtime political activist and organizer, but because this teaching that I'm about to share is the way that I learned who I was, like learned more about myself, learned how to really see myself and hear myself, which is what we want, right? We want to be heard and be seen. And that's also some of the hardest work we'll ever do, is learning how to be heard and seen. And through this work, I learned my mindset, right? So that's what I'm going to share you, just a short little process that can be very potent around mindset and how to shift it. And, to really understand how your thoughts, how your beliefs, are what they are, right? Like how you have gotten here to this moment, no matter where you are or what's going on for you in your life. And that you have really you have the creative power and potential to make changes in your life, right? Saturn is, as Sandy was saying, it's like there is yes, we'll experience a lot of shifts in the external, right? But it's all as a reflection, a mirror for your internal. So if we just try to do our way and try to change all the external, we're really missing out on the opportunity that is internal alignment, right? See what we did there? So, see, when Saturn comes in, when you're dancing with Saturn, whether in retrograde or any of those times that Sandy shared, or, even between those times, right? It's not like Saturn disappears out of the sky. It's not like, astrology doesn't exist all of a sudden, right? You're just floating out in space. But there are foundational shifts available. And that's really what Saturn wants for you. I mean, yeah, we talked to Saturn. I'm going to say that like that's what Saturn wants for you. So mindset, can you put up the slide, Sandy? Oh,
Yeah.
is it up? Oh, great.
So wait, I want it as the speaker.
Oh, great.
Or whatnot, so that people can see it.
Okay. Well, is it staying, just a quick tech check, is it staying up even though I'm talking, or do I have to like click it?
I don't know.
Let's see. Can you look at the front end and see so it doesn't like end up strobing?
You keep talking and I'll do that. It's going to take me just a sec.
I think maybe I have to just pin it.
That's what I was thinking.
No, there's no way to do that.
Oh, no? Okay.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
We figured this out once before. So I'll start talking. Well, here, why don't we just, I think if I just click on you, I think it maybe does it. So mindset, initially, like there's an orbit, right? So there's an orbit of mindset. And so at the top here is experience. And that means like you've had a situation, occurrence, an experience in your life. And remember, we were talking back about like age 7, 8, 6, 7, 8 being like the age of reason, or like the development of your mental body, that that your mindset really started to gel. It's when you start to look at the world and be like, oh, that's who I am, and this is what is happening, and this is the truth, and this is the world, and this is me, and this is how I fit in the world, right? It's a very unconscious process. And so things, what I want you, since we're talking about retrograde, and Sandy was talking about the different situations of like lack and the resources of like time and money and scarcity, right? So we're just going to put a pin in that. Oh, Sandy, did you say something?
No, I didn't, but I was just muting. I found the page, so it's working great, but okay. I didn't say anything.
Okay, perfect. So, so basically, what you have is an experience that you had as a child that was destabilizing on some level, and I'm going to guide you through like tuning into what one of those key ones are for you in a minute. But I want you to just like to just know that like destabilization as an adult is very different than destabilization as a child, right? So things that affected you as a child, like maybe you moved around a lot, right? And like maybe you moved houses a bunch of times, or you moved around, and like as a grown up, you're sort of like, yeah, I moved around a lot. That's just part of who I am. Well, as a child, that can be very destabilizing, right? Because your world is so small. So I'm going to want you to just like understand that the basic idea is that when we're working with mindset and when we're looking at patterns of your life, right? So patterns give us access into your deepest beliefs, right? Your belief, it's like your belief mindset, your belief system. And when we're feeling like we're running up against something that isn't working, it's usually because there's a limiting belief at the core of it. And so doing mindset work is how we can understand, it's not the only way to do this, but it's a key way, and it's a really beautiful Saturnian way, that we can really like understand the structure, right? The inner structure, our inner structure, and work with it, right? Bring it up from the unconscious up to the conscious mind. So then you have an experience, it's destabilizing. And then our orbit continues, our mindset orbit here. And then, we start thinking about it. We start going like, oh, well, why did that happen? And why, like what did that mean? And we're children, right? Remember, so you're like having a child thought process about it. You're just trying to make sense of something that was destabilizing, maybe a little scary. And so it's a perception, right? You're thinking, you're having thoughts. Well, 90% of our thoughts are repeats from the day before. So, if you think about like energy following thought, like everything in the universe is energy, right? Is a vibration, right? That if you keep having the same thoughts over and over, that vibration is going to make like a vibrational wavelength, right? It's like going to become a repeated pattern, like a groove in a record. And so we have a perception, a thought of like, why did that thing happen, right? Why did mommy get mad at me, right? Like, or why is mommy upset? Like, oh, it must be my fault, right? Like, oh, I probably have to be better. I should probably like, I have to be this or that, right? So we start to sort of like unconsciously try to figure it out. And then that wavelength, it gets created, it becomes a belief. And so then it's like really set. It's like you planted a seed with a thought, and then it grew. You watered it every day by thinking about it. And then it grew a root inside of you. And so that belief became like a deep rooted belief. And because we're focusing on a destabilizing experience, chances are that belief is a limiting belief, right? So it's like, oh, why was mommy like, something happened. Maybe why was mommy upset, or why, why are my parents fighting, or, like, oh, what's that? Like that feels really bad. And, oh, maybe it's my fault. And then like, oh, maybe I'm bad. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I can't get it right. And then that belief like, oh, I'm not doing it right. Or like, I'm not good enough. You know, all the populars, right? Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm all alone. I have to do this all myself. I can't trust anyone. The world is a hopeless mess. You know, just all these different deep beliefs that we all share, you know, sort of like across our human family here, it really start to root into our system. And so then if we keep following the orbit, right, like that belief will give rise to more thoughts, emotions, and actions that are coming from that belief, right? So then it's like we're thinking all the time in the background, like, well, I'm not good enough, and like, and we're beating ourselves up, right? We do something, then we judge it, right? And then our emotions of like, oh, I just feel like I can't, like nothing is working, and you know, and just like deep emotions of like maybe sadness or grief or anger and frustration, right? And they're all coming from this deeper belief about ourselves that's limiting. And then, you know, it'll also fuel our actions, which includes self-talk and includes speech. And so basically then what we're doing is orbiting back up to experience. And we're recreating the same experience over again, or a version of that initial experience of feeling destabilized, and really like sort of proving to ourselves unconsciously that on an unconscious level that we're, you know, whatever that limiting belief is, right? Like, I can't do it right, that we're not good enough, that we're, you know, that we're all alone, whatever that one is for you. Sorry, we've got, I'm on a property, a big property. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a dog party outside right now. They're getting treats, and so they're very excited. So pardon the dog party here. So, yeah, so that's you know, if anyone has any questions, I'm not looking at like chat or anything right now. So I don't know, Sandy, if you see anything, let me know. But otherwise, that's sort of like the basis of mindset. So now let me just pull out my notes here. So let's, you know, what I want you to look at is, you know, remember I said we're putting a pin earlier. I said earlier that we're putting a pin in, you know, what Sandy was talking about these Saturn retrograde patterns, the thing that we might be really noticing right now around like money and time, feeling limited, just like scarcity. Sandy I know we were talking about general, like big patterns in general, but Sandy, was there anything else specific that we feel like is coming up right now around retrograde? Like around like feeling a lot of like pressure, or, you know, in general, just like feeling like limitation?
I think people are assessing their workloads and figure out like what they can actually do and what it's all for.
Got it. Perfect. Here, I'm going to go back to my head here. Which may or may not be working. You might still be seeing a slide. I'm not entirely sure, but that's fine. So, and Cindy, actually, can you go to the next slide?
Yes, I can. Hold on one sec. There you are. And cool. We can still see the slides. Oh, no, wait, no, now we see you, not the slides.
Okay, wait, how about that? No? I think you did it last time where you said it.
Nope, it was you.
Maybe.
That worked.
Oh, there, wait, I think I did it.
Good
Something
job.
happened. That was different. So what I want you to think about right now, are we good?
It is flashing back and forth between, talk again for a second.
Let's see. Okay, no, we're flashing because I can see it. But now it's standing for me. If I click it, then
Good job.
We did it. Okay, great. So, well, thanks, y'all. So, so what I want you to think about is like a pattern. What pattern's up for you right now? Maybe something came up when Sandy was talking about retrograde, about these deeper patterns, the limitations that you're feeling, you know, like looking at your like workload or how you are like doing your work in the world. Sandy and I, of course, talk about that all the time, you know, or some other like scarcity issue or anything else that's like a pattern in your life. Maybe it's a pattern in relationships that feels limiting and you feel like you keep coming back around and you're just like ready to break it. You're like, oh my God, I can't come back around to this pattern again, and just keep going through it, right? And I want you to write that down. I want you to just take a moment, write it down. Like, what's the pattern? You know, you can feel free to you know, share it in the chat below the video. You know, just take a moment and don't edit, just like let it flow. Like, what's the pattern? You know, what is up for you right now? Where are you noticing these limitations? What are you butting up against? Great. Good. And so, you'll see the slide here that says 4 steps. So this is a multi-step process for transformation that I learned through my beautiful teachers, Gail Straub and David Gershon of the Empowerment Institute, Raw Goddess of Move the Crowd, other amazing teachers. But I'd say like those are some of my like 3 top teachers. And Gail and David are teachers of Raw as well, that really helped me understand. Oh, and J. Love Calderon, that really helped me understand mindset work, right? And really understand this process. And I have definitely like, added my own flair over the years working with it. So this first part is awareness, right? So I want you to like look at the part, really look at that pattern. And now I want you to take a deeper cut in it. And like, it's like, what do you believe about yourself, right? What's the story? What I love to ask is like, what's the story in that pattern, right? Because you might be like, oh, well, those people are doing this and this is what's happening to me. I want you to bring the focus inward, right? Very Saturnian. And like, what's the story you're telling yourself about yourself in this pattern, right? What's the story you're telling yourself about yourself as you get caught, as you move, you get hooked and move through this pattern over and over again? Be honest with yourself here, right? So take a moment and write it down. What do you believe about yourself? Right. And this is going to be like that limiting belief. This is going to be that, it's going to show up as, it's probably going to show up as a limit right now, right? Like as you're looking at it. And it feels like, you notice when you say it. I want you to notice like when you say it, when you think it, like, how does it feel? Right? Chances are it feels like contracting, and you say it and you're like, oh, and like the good news about that feeling is that it's actually letting you know that it's not the truth of who you really are, right? It's programming. You could have gotten that programming, like that could have gotten handed to you straight from your parents. It could be ancestral. It's probably a bit of, all sorts of different things. So I want you to now look at like, where does it come from? Like, where's the first time you remember feeling that feeling, right? Like this limiting belief. Like, when's the first time you remember like sort of having that thought, right? So it's like, we're looking at that experience, remember, in mindset, and then that perception. It's like, ooh, when did that happen? Right? When's the first time you really, and it might be a really specific incident. It could be just like, oh, I remember in my childhood sort of feeling this, or, whenever I was like around my dad, I sort of felt this thing, right? So it's okay. It doesn't have to be super specific. Just write down whatever is coming up for you. And even if it feels benign, like, oh, when I come home from school, like, no one was there, or whatever, even if that's a sort of feels like a benign-ish memory, go ahead and just like write down. Or if it's something that's well-traveled, you've spent years in therapy on it, like just write it down, right? Where does it come from? What's the root? And you can always return to some of this for homework, right? So like you might just even write down some of these prompting questions. We're still in awareness here. So now I want you to look at like, what's the benefit? And about going back to this as homework, it's like, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for like what's in the unconscious to like bubble up to the surface. So don't worry if it's not all coming right now. Sometimes it's right on the surface and you can just touch it and be like, oh yeah, that. And sometimes you got to give yourself more time, right? No shame in the game. We're not all the same. And like the way our unconscious processes and our conscious mind process information at all. So I want you to look at like, like what's the benefit? What's a way that you made that limiting belief work for you, right? So if it was like, oh, I feel all alone, or like, I don't feel really supported as a kid, right? A lot of times we can just feel like, oh, I had like emotional needs that felt like they were unmet, or my parents were paying attention to a sibling and I didn't really get the attention that I felt like I needed. Then it can be like, a benefit can be like, well, then I just learned how to do it all myself, right? I learned to be super self-sufficient, right? And so sometimes that's a benefit and sometimes it's a coping mechanism, right? So just go ahead and take a moment, write any of that down, or you can just write down the prompting question and come back to it later. Right? It's like, what's a way that you made it work for you? Good. And now here's a really important part. Like, what's the cost? Right? Like, what did it cost you? What is it costing you now to continue to believe this limiting belief? right? What's it costing you? Is it costing you your relationships? Is it costing you your joy, your creativity, your self-expression, your freedom, right? So, so I'd love for you to just like take a moment and look at like, what's the cost, right? What is it costing you? What has it cost you over time? Good. And so now I just, what I love to do is just take a moment and I'll share a meditation in the homework. So in the follow-up email we send you about doing some deeper inner child work, right? But this is like forgiveness work. And so I just want you to pull up, as you were looking at the root, and like, when's the first time that this showed up? When's the first time I remember feeling that feeling, having that thought? I want you to just close your eyes for a moment and like pull up the image of yourself at that time, right? So it's gonna be your child self, right? And I want you to just see that little one and just like beam some love and light on them, beam some forgiveness, right? Forgiveness meaning that like they're the ones that came up with this limiting belief, right, about yourself and about the world. And they're the ones that were just trying to survive, right? They were just trying to make it. They were just trying to make sense of the world. They didn't have tons of worldly experience, right? We're very resilient as children, but we don't have a lot of experience. And so, so I want you to just like beam some love, light, and forgiveness on them, and just really like see them, embrace them, love up on them, tell them that they did a good job. Maybe you even tell them that they don't have to do it this way anymore, right? They don't have to hold this burden, right? Which is very Saturnian, right? This feeling of like burden and pressure. Let them know that you'll be back to spend more time with them. Good. And just see a door closing in your mind. And you can do some more good work with that later for homework. So what I would love for you now is just vision. Like, how would you ask yourself a simple question? I know it's a big one, but it can also be simple, and just let it flow. How would you like things to be? Right? If you could have your way, and you can, how would you like things to be? Meaning like, what's on the other side of that limit, right? So if it's like, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, I'm all alone, and and I feel like I have to do everything myself in order for it to be right, or like I'm not good enough and I just can't do it, and I just like I can't get it right, and so like I just need other people in my life to tell me what to do, whatever it is, right? That's showing up for you, whatever pattern. I want you to like, what could be on the other side, right? If you could have your way, and you can, good news. Like, how would you like things to be? How would you like to feel about yourself, right? Let's lean into feeling, not just like, I want to have a great job, or I want to have this great relationship. It's not just about having and doing. I want you to tune in here to being. How do you want to be? How do you want to feel, right? Like, how would you like to feel about yourself? Take a moment, write it down. Good. And even if it came through in images, right? Maybe it was just like, oh, you just felt like an image of like flowing water, right? That's cool. That's great. That's your unconscious, like giving you some information, right? Through your own unique, psychic vocabulary. So now this next part, which is transformation, which is, it's what we call the growing edge. So without going too much into it, we go much deeper into it in the, in the Saturn Return workshop, in the sort of bigger container that Sandy and I hold for this work. It's the growing edge is really about like, how to, it's like the shift that you need to make inside yourself, right? To like what you believe, right? Like the thought that you have about yourself, like to get towards that vision. So it's like, what do you need to shift in how you see yourself and what you believe about yourself in order to get towards that vision that you just articulated, right? That you just started to touch on. Maybe it feels really robust and maybe you feel like you're just touching on it, right? So, using an example of, like not feeling good enough, and not feeling like you can do it, or that you just like can't do it right, or it's just not working for you. You just like can't have success, right? You can't, however it's manifesting for you right now. I want you to tune in, like, it's like that belief that that you can't, right? And you looked at the root of it, and that you just like don't believe in yourself, right? I want you to imagine, right? And that it feels sort of like dark and heavy, right? Because remember, it's not the truth of who you really are. It's your emotions letting you know what's true, what's not true. And I want you to imagine, like, what else could be possible for you? Is there another way that you could just sort of like flip your brain, right? Just in this exercise, whether you're doing it now or later, and just like imagine something, like what do you need to believe about yourself in order to get closer to that vision? So maybe it's something like, even just initially like noticing like, God, I'm so hard on myself, right? I'm so judgmental of myself. Like, what if I just, what if I just loved on myself, right? What if I just loved up on myself for being who I am, right? Or what if I just acknowledge that like I could, I could absolutely, even just like trying on the idea that I could have, what I want, or I could, when we decide like, oh, I can't have these things, it's really ends up being a hard, like we start, it's like we've believed in it so long, we've had the thought for so long that it feels immovable. And so what I'm inviting you to do is like move this a little bit, right? Is there some other way that you could see yourself? Is there some other way that you could really like own, like something else that you could, another framework that you could own about yourself? That might let you get closer to the vision. Sandy, do you have any, I always feel like you're so good here with like, with this, giving examples.
Like, for example, something from my own life where, so when I worked with Dana, and I was really lucky to get to do this work in depth with Dana, I unearthed a pattern in my own life, which was a realization that I had worked so hard to feel worthy. I thought that my value in my family as a kid was the fact that I could help. And so in my relationships as an adult, I found myself always helping and always working. And I didn't know that I had a deeper belief that I was doing that because I thought if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be loved. And so my kind of new way, my new path, my new step forward that I realized about what I needed to believe was that I'm worthy to be loved just the way I am. Yeah. And just because I am alive, and I don't need to do anything or be anyone or help anyone in order to earn it. So that was a big breakthrough for me.
Beautiful. Absolutely. So thank you for that, Sandy. Like that's definitely, like in the, hold on, I'm going to like go back here. That's, like that's a beautiful example of how we, start to like notice and work with our mindsets, right? And start to look like, okay, wait, what is really, like what else is possible for me? Sometimes we just need to like turn it around. And, it's like, what else could be possible, in my life? If I've been telling myself this one story for so long, right? I was asking like, what are you telling yourself about yourself? If you've been telling this for so long and it feels shitty, like what, like what's something that could feel a little better, right? Because you've been investing in one truth, and I want you to see that you've been investing in it and that's not working for you anymore. It's not working. You look at the cost is probably really big. And so now I want you to like get that, like, let me just imagine a different story, right? It's not like poof, imagine a different story. Oh, everything's great and sparkles and glitter, right? And unicorns. It's like, let me just start to shift my attention, right? Because like energy follows thought. So it's like where you start to give your attention, right? The law of attention. There's also the law of attraction, right? We work with all of them, is where you will start to experience change in your life. Right? So we do internal work in order for external work. Does that make sense? We do internal shift in order to experience external shift. If we just focus on external shift and trying to make things different outside of us, we, in order to change something internally, we gotta, like it's not going to create sustainable change. It might work for a short time, but it's not going to work for a long time. Like you're going to just sort of like rearrange the furniture and it'll feel good for a while. And then you'll still notice that like there's a crack in the foundation and the paint is peeling, you know what I mean? And the electricity isn't working. So that's, we're about that like deep foundational work. And that's what this is. So I'm just giving you a little taste. You're going to want to like dig deeper into this for homework. Some folks, you might be having some like pops right now of insight, which is great and often happens in these little short workshops. So the last part here is just and I do, and you can take a moment now, but also for homework, dive deeper into it. Is just like, is there a statement, right? So remember we did the little mindset orbit and we talked about the experience, and we talked about the perception. So it's like, we can't change the initial experience, but we can change your perception, right? So we're like creating a new timeline for you. So instead of going this one, the one that you've been doing forever and it doesn't feel good, right? We got the experience, but like, let's come up with a new thought about it, right? About yourself, and like create a new trajectory from you based on the same experience, right? So the new thought, right? Plant a new seed thought. We can call this like a turnaround. It's this last, in these 4 steps, it's really where you get to like, what do you want to think and believe about yourself? And like, write it down, right? A new thought about like how you want to move through the world, right? Sandy, did you want to share yours again real quick? Like what that new thought was for you, right? And it can be very similar to the growing, sort of this growing edge, right?
Yes. So for me, the new thought was, I'm worthy just because I'm alive. And that felt very profound and like a big breakthrough, because it was the opposite of every part of my being had been working under the belief that I have to prove myself. And so that was the new thought. I'm worthy just because I'm alive.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you can take the slide down, Sandy, and we want to see your beautiful face. Great. So I want you, it's like, so take a moment, write it down, right? Like what is that new thought for you? And what I want you to do for homework, besides, maybe going deeper on some of these things that you felt like, did I have access to this right now? Do I have time right now? Maybe I'm doing this for homework later. So doing the different pieces that we talked about, but I also want you to then, once you have that new thought, I want you to start working with it, which means you start every morning. I want you to go into the mirror and I want you to look at yourself and I want you to say this thing out loud, right? So mirror work, mirror work has been something that's been around for a very long time. Louise Hay has a great little booklet called Mirror Work that you can check out. But this is really about like seeing yourself and then saying it out loud so you can hear the resonance in your own bones. Vibration is very, very important. So this isn't just about thinking it, but I want you to think it throughout the day, right? But I want you to say it too. I want you to say it out loud throughout the day. The vibration is very, very important. We're literally creating new vibration, new neural networks, neural pathways, right? But like also vibrations. Good. Beautiful work. And if you want to, besides sharing in the chat, if you want to send an email, using the little chat icon at the bottom corner of this page, and you want to just like let us know, like, here's what I came up with, like, and you want to share it with us, please do. We love, love, love receiving them.
Thank you, Dana, for that beautiful teaching. And this work is really the kind of work to be doing during Saturn retrograde, because this is what will help you figure out, like, am I having scarcity around time or money? Or like, what do I want to be putting my energy into? Or what is really in alignment with me? We have to do this deeper inner work. at a Saturn retrograde, and also at any of those other key ages that I shared, this is the kind of work to do, is this deeper work, and to do it within the support of a community as well. And the biggest question I've always gotten from my clients is, well, how do I do that? Or where do I do that? Or help me do that? And where do I go? Who can I work with? And so for that reason, Dana and I have gone to the lengths to create a whole structure for this, a whole workshop that you can do on your own time, but with the support of a community and a group, to create this kind of wonderful change in your life. And it's called the Saturn Return Workshop. And this is what we are here to share with you, to give you some steps that you can take, some framework, a structure, and a community as well. You know, the biggest thing I'm hearing from people during the Saturn retrograde is, like, I'm feeling so alone. Where are my people? And there are some wonderful people here who are sharing deep, like personal, vulnerable stuff and getting a lot of support. And it's amazing what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, like we were saying before, that support is really important. You know, what Sandy and I received in different ways, support through this, you know, through our Saturn return, but now also have created not just this workshop for you, but like our own, our own support networks to help us just through, through our lives, and like how valuable that has been for us. And so, the Saturn Return Workshop, it's for you if, like, yes, you're in or nearing a Saturn transit, like Sandy said, late 20s, late 50s, but then all these other key ages, like around 37, Saturn open square. Sandy and I went through that a couple of years ago, or maybe it was just last year. That had its own special flavor, mid 40s, early 50s, late 50s again, mid 60s. And so, this is also for you if this work has today like really resonated with you, and it's time to shift some deep old patterns, right? And that are coming to the surface right now at this retrograde, or that have just been bubbling up to the surface. Maybe you're curious, like working more with astrology, and you want to work more closely with an astrologer, right? Like Sandy is that one. She's an amazing teacher, as you may have already divined. And maybe you just want guidance, structure, and support through wherever you are in your life right now, right? You feel like maybe you're floating out there a little bit alone. And maybe that's just like the structure and support of like, here's what to do. Here's some coursework. Here's some exercises. Here's how I do deep work. And maybe it's also like, if you're looking for a community, you don't have to participate in the community part of it. But if that is something you're looking for, it's very rich and very sweet. And maybe you just feel like you're ready to step into your power and do work to really design your life around what's most important to you.
Yeah, that alignment we're talking about, right? It's like you have to create this alignment from the foundation. And the way, if you want like kind of the nuts and bolts of how this works, I'll tell you about the astrology, and Dana will tell you about the coaching and how it really comes together. What is this thing? So you get a whole teaching around astrology. So if you're astro curious, as I like to say, this is definitely the place for you to be. You'll also get your personalized birth chart with a report about your Saturn placement in your chart, this house, the sign that your Saturn is in, when your next Saturn transit is, when your last one was, depending on where you're at. And so you really learn and gain insight about yourself through the video trainings and the audio trainings that are available for you to do at any time that you want. They're there. Anywhere you have the internet, you can access these trainings. And so you're starting to build out a lot of insight about yourself and about your deep lessons, all based on your astrology. And you can go deep into this. Some people start out just doing the Saturn Return Workshop and end up doing like little mini readings for their friends and like really getting into astrology. This happens a lot. So, kind of the astrology teaching kind of sneaks up on you. It's like, you're like, yeah, I'm ready for deep inner work. And then you're like, whoa, now I'm really good at astrology. What happened? It's really nice. And it's very integrated into the trainings and the teaching. And it helps you understand your journey. You're going to get this personalized information that helps you understand who you are and what you're doing. And then there's the coaching.
Okay, sorry, I had muted myself. um, so on the coaching side, you got a much deeper dive into this multi-step process for really mastering your mindset, really learning how to work with your own thoughts, right? If you feel like you have monkey mind and your thoughts are all over the place and you just feel like a bit of a slave to your thoughts or your emotions, right? Or you feel a bit of a, like at the mercy of them, a victim to them, and they're just sort of happening and you like have a hard time controlling them, and you just have like rampant, like, intense, like negative thoughts, negative self-talk, right? Like we're going to learn how to shift that. You can absolutely learn how to shift that. And it's not just a matter of like, think happy, posy thoughts, right? Positive thinking can be part of it, but like, there's so much more. There's, and I don't just mean more, I just mean like a way to like drop it down into your soul where you're not just trying to like talk yourself out of negative self-talk or talk yourself out of these old patterns, right? You actually like are learning more about like who you really are on a core level. It's a beautiful process. I share healing guidance to like really working with your emotions more powerfully, which is super important. We definitely do some curated energy work exercises, some rituals. You get daily and weekly homework exercises, including like some really rich journal prompts to like, guide you through the process. And you really get a structural sort of redesign so that you can, as I have here on the slide, change your life for the long haul. NBD, no big deal, right? I mean, it is a big deal. Your life is a big deal, even though you're just like this tiny little speck, and I'm this tiny little speck, Sandy's this tiny little speck. When we heal, the earth heals, right? So it's like, there's also like a collective, a time like the earth needs us right now, right? So it's like by doing inner work, it's not like navel gazy. It doesn't have to be that at all. You can actually, as you do your own healing work, you can inspire a lot of others, right? You never know who you're going to inspire. You never know when you're being a leader necessarily, right?
So beautiful. These people come into this workshop and they do change their lives dramatically. And it's like, where else is there a workshop that can help you transform, on a deep and aligned level, which is what Saturn wants for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a year access. And during that year, you have like full access to all of the recordings that you can access from anywhere. So this is the videos, the audios, the worksheets, the guided meditation, everything is there for you. And you can really go at your own pace throughout the year. And during this year, you also have bi-weekly, which means 2 times a month, Q&As with me and Dana. And so this is live time. It's incredible. It ends up being about 20 hours altogether of time with us as your coach and astrologer. And you can ask us all of your questions and show up as much as you want and be like assisted personally. Now it's all in the group, but you're getting your real personal questions answered to the degree that you want them to be answered. And it's incredible. Like there's no other place that Dana and I are both offering our services to this level of like high touch personal interaction for the price that this workshop is. It's a really, really huge value. Then you're going to get a ton of bonuses. I think we have like 6 now.
No, we have like 8. We have like 8 bonuses. 8 bonuses. They're super juicy.
Too many.
Right?
Yeah.
Bonuses galore. But you get a lot of like beautiful audios from Sandy diving deeper into the astrology. There's some ritual work. There's a 60-day workbook. There's a lot of really like carefully curated resources to help you as like to like deepen your journey, right? And then whatever else we add to the course during the year, and obviously we have 8 bonuses, so we love to add things, that you get access to that as well.
And you get access to the private Facebook community, which is huge. Any questions that are coming up throughout the weeks that we're not, that you're not in that live Q&A, those questions get attended to as well. And because of the magic of the internet, this work goes with you anywhere you go in the world, as long as there is internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely. And, we have, here's where we like, I think we have so many amazing students, and we have a lot of testimonials, and you can scroll down if you're watching, now or later, you can scroll down the page and see a bunch of beautiful testimonials. But this one came in from Cassandra, and she was, we won't read the whole thing, but what she speaks to here is about the fundamental like changing in the way that she relates to herself and others, the way she relates to her own past and future, how the combination of astrological guidance and real life skills helped her cope with anything that her life might be throwing at her, right? And it was everything that she needed to really gain insight and drive to move through some of her biggest life challenges. And it was, she calls it a real game-changing moment for her in her life, truly empowering and enlightening. Right. So that's this is a beautiful yet relatively like typical testimonial that we get, because when folks show up to do the work, like this work will work. I have a coach that, when people say like, well, will this work for me? Right. We're going to get into some Q&As right here. It's like this, you're special, but you're not so special that this work won't work for you if you work it, right? If you show up to do it. And that looks different for all of us, right? Like everyone, we got a lot of folks right now who are like, I'm feeling behind in the work. And it's like, let's look at that pattern of feeling behind, right? Let's look at that pattern of feeling like you're not doing it right? Like, so everything, once you say yes to the work, everything becomes an aspect of the work, and we're here to help you see it. We're here to help you unpack it. So, so the workshop is all yours for, you can do a full payment of $497, or you can do 9 monthly payments of $77. And we're offering this for the next 48 hours. So you have, I think we're closing this on around midnight on May 18th, which is Saturday. So, this will be up for the next, through then. You can go back and rewatch the training through then, any parts that you want to get. And then this offer is here for you. And there's also an option to add 2 60-minute coaching sessions for an additional $222. So that's one with Sandy, one with me. That is less than, the cost of one session for one of us. Our commitment is to make this work accessible, but it is also an investment, right? It's an investment which might be pulling up some stuff for you, especially if like some of that scarcity, I can't invest in myself. Like I don't, like there are other things that need my money. Like we get it. There's some real world things around money. Absolutely. And actually we work a lot with folks around money and scarcity and abundance in the workshop. And, so if you're ready to actually have a mindset shift around that, this could be a beautiful place for you. But we also do want people to take that leap, to like make that effort to make that investment in themselves, and to like acknowledge like all the stuff that comes up for you when you think about investing in yourself.
And this is a discounted price that, as Dana said, is only available until Saturday night. So typically it's much more expensive than this. So get in while you can. And also the 9 monthly payments of $77 is something that we've decided to offer special for you right now. We're testing it out. That's an amazing way, a very, very accessible way to jump in on the work with us. And that also is a discounted price. So here you are. There is a chance to get in for a really wonderful value. And so if you have questions, now is the time for us to answer your wonderful questions.
And you can just, if you're ready to like make the, take the leap, you can just like, hit that button that's right below the video, and you can sign right up, and you'll have access within like 5 to 15 minutes to like jump in the work, right? It's immediate. You get to start working. You can get access to the Facebook group right away if you want to. So, it's like everything can happen relatively quickly if you're like, if you're itching to do it, right?
Yes, totally. And you can read more on the page. Common questions that come up are, like, what's the schedule for this? What's the timing of this course? So we do have a suggestive flow that we've created for the coursework, which is 12 weeks. And that is our suggestion to give you structure to help you if you're someone who wants to go along with a certain pace, and kind of we help you through that process by sending you a weekly email to remind you of where in the coursework you could be if you're following our suggestive flow. But the truth is that you have a full year. So a lot of times things come up, you know, there's weddings to go to and extra work to do, whatever's happening in your life, we know that you have a rich and full life. And so you have a full year, you do this work at your own pace, but you still get access to the live Q&As with Dana and I. So it's kind of the best of all worlds. There is a 12-week structure, but you could also do it at your own pace.
Yeah, and what's great about the Q&As, of course, we like record them and you can watch them. So if you can't make it live, you can submit questions. There's all these ways to submit questions and then we'll answer them. And then, you know, we can be in conversation about them, right? So there's a lot of ways to interact with us. Sandy and I make ourselves like pretty damn available. And, you know, it's also like, it's intimate, right? So sometimes there's like, you know, 10 people on, sometimes there's 2 people on. So you basically, they're office hours, right? Like you get Sandy and I all up in your biz. And, you know, as the community keeps growing, obviously, like, you know, as soon as you want to get in is like the best time because we'll just keep growing and there'll be more and more people. But it can still be relatively like sweet and intimate and we'll be like right there with you, right? You know, another question that comes up a lot.
Dana, I think we need you to make your screen show so we can see your face too.
Oh, really? Did that work? Am I doing something now?
There's a little bit of delay on my side, so I'll just give it a minute. We'll see if it's showing you.
Okay. Well, you know, another question that we get a lot is like, should I do this course if I'm not in my Saturn return? Right.
Yes,
and you know, it's like, this course is designed to support you like before, during, and after your Saturn return and the other transits, the other hot spots of the Saturn cycle, wherever you are. You know, Sandy talked about doing, you know, this deep mindset work like after her Saturn return, right? So it was like, and before her Saturn open square, right? So it wasn't just about these transit times of like late 20s or 37. It's like any time this work is going to really support you. And we get to just leverage what's happening astrologically to help you.
Yes. So we are here for you. We want to be your guides. We want to be your coaches, your teachers. We've created a structure that really works for people. And if you have questions about it, we're here to answer those too. But don't let too much grass grow, as Dana likes to say. You know, keep things moving and email us today or tomorrow or Saturday so we can get you in for this wonderful discounted price. And we would love to work with you. We're super pumped about this process and we believe in it fully and we love it.
Yeah. And, you know, once you dive in and you just like start getting access to the work, like people always start, you know, it's like we get notes like right away, people start having shifts like right away as they start doing the work, right? Like in the first like lesson or two with Sandy and did the deep astrological part of it. Right. And then it's like, and then it carries over. And so you have a year with us, right? Like you have this price, $497 one payment, or, you know, 9 sweet payments of $77, which hopefully makes that more affordable and accessible. Yes, as Sandy said, we would love the opportunity to support you. If you have any questions over the next couple of days, let us know, and we are here for you.
Yay. All right. Beautiful. So Dana, my dear, I'm so grateful to get to teach with you. This is so fun. And I am excited to meet all our wonderful new people coming in during the Saturn retrograde. I think Saturn retrograde is the best time to do this deep inner work. We love teaching about Saturn during Saturn retrograde because it makes so much intuitive sense. It feels right. So we'll hope to get to do that with you very soon.
And thank you so much for joining us today, or, you know, whenever you're joining us. Thank you so much for just like, you know, I want you to honor yourself for making time for you, right? Because there are lots of us who can be like, oh, I'm too busy and I got a million other things to do and I'm trying to change all these things outside of myself. So honor yourself for making time for you today, for doing the deep work. You know, go back into it as you need to. Go back and watch little bits of the, you know, bits of the training. Ask questions. We're here. You know, just good job. Celebrate you. Do something nice for yourself this weekend. And we hope to get to support you in this deep dive.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.